This sitcom exploded onto the scene in 2011 and became a cultural phenomenon. With its crude jokes, over-the-top characters, it was different, loud, chaotic, and unapologetically old school. Over the years, several key cast members left, some quietly, others with controversy. Why did they walk away from one of the UK and Ireland's most-watched shows? Personal rifts, creative differences, or something more? Let's take a closer look at the real reasons these actors left Mrs. Brown's Boys and how it changed the show forever. History of Mrs. Brown's Boys before it became one of the BBC's most-watched comedies. Mrs. Brown's Boys began life far from the bright lights of television studios. In fact, the story starts on the modest stages of Ireland in the early 1990s. Brendan O'Carroll, then a stand-up comedian and struggling writer, had an idea. Inspired by Irish matriarchs he'd grown up around, he created a character who would change his life. Agnes Brown. A no-nonsense, foul-mouthed Dublin mammy with a heart of gold. Agnes was equal parts chaos and compassion. O'Carroll originally introduced her in his radio play and later in his self-published book The Mammy, which laid the foundation for what would soon become a theatrical sensation. The character of Agnes Brown was never meant to be played by Brendan himself, at least not at first. But when the actress originally cast for the role failed to show up for a live performance of one of his early plays, Brendan did what any natural-born performer would do. He threw on a dress, a wig, and stepped into the role himself. And just like that, Mrs. Brown was born, not on the page but on stage. Audiences responded immediately. There was something raw, unpredictable, and real about this Irish mammy who broke the fourth wall, hurled insults with love, and somehow kept her family together through sheer force of will. As the play began to take off, Brendan began traveling it around the country and eventually across the waters. These productions were not polished or conventional by any means. In fact, part of the beauty of it was the chaos. Misline cues were cut, scripted moments made way to comments directed to audience members, and even out-of-character direct address. It wasn't one of those highbrow facings it pretended not to be, but it was this and really hilarious. The shows found a cult following, particularly with working-class Irish and British audiences who did see some version of their families displayed on stage, albeit louder, messier, and usually with a pint and a swear word. Not until 2011, almost 20 years after its first appearance on stage, did Mrs. Brown's Boys make its screen debut. The UK's BBC One, however, took a chance on O'Carroll's work low-budget sitcom adaptation. Much of the format still ran on stage conventions, live audiences, production fluffs visible, and direct-to-camera observations. Critics were not impressed. They had a field day with the show regarding fans of what it constituted as an outdated sense of humor, excessive portrayals of innuendo, and supposedly cheap laughter. Brendan O'Carroll didn't just create a character. He built the cast around his real-life family and friends. His wife, Jennifer Gibney, played Kathy, Agnes's daughter. His son Danny played Dermot, while his daughter Fiona portrayed Maria. Even his sister, Eilish O'Carroll, appeared as Winnie McGugan, the lovable next-door neighbor. All that gave the series an undeniable chemistry, a warmth that even the most fervent critic couldn't deny, but also the very realism of that closeness brought inevitable problems now and again. With relations changing over the years, occasional tensions would flare up off-screen. The show and the brand became more inextricably intertwined than ever. The live tour continued with packed arenas in the UK and Australia. Christmas specials were must-watch television, having record audiences every year. There were books, DVDs, merchandise, and even Mrs. Brown's Boys movie, a feature film released in 2014 that received poor reviews but still found success at the box office in Ireland and the UK. Brendan O'Carroll had not only created a character, he had built a comedy empire. But fame brought with it friction. Cast members who had been around for years began to depart, some for personal reasons, others for more professional disputes. And the fans began to notice. Yet, even while Mrs. Brown's Boys is not without its failings, it does remain a cultural salt in terms of British and Irish television. Love it or hate it, there is no denying the impact it's made. In an era of high-concept sitcoms and prestige television, Mrs. Brown's Boys stands alone, unashamedly unrefined, defiantly old school, and unapologetically itself. The success story is one of resilience, passion, and the power of taking a risk, even if that risk entails a cardigan man yelling at his children in a fake living room. And for Brendan O'Carroll, what began as a last-minute substitution on the stage turned into one of the most enduring comedy creations of a generation. But just as the show found its rhythm on screen, change was already brewing behind the scenes, starting with someone very close to Brendan O'Carroll. Fiona O'Carroll, Maria Brown. One of the first major exits that sent ripples through the Mrs. Brown's Boys fanbase was that of Fiona O'Carroll, who played Maria Brown, the sweet but strong-willed daughter-in-law of Agnes and the long-suffering wife of Dermot. Fiona wasn't just another cast member. She was Brendan O'Carroll's real-life daughter and had been a part of the Mrs. Brown universe since the very beginning. From early stage plays in the 1990s to the primetime BBC version, Fiona had helped shape Maria into one of the show's most grounded and relatable characters. So, when news broke in 2022 that she would not be joining the cast for the live stage tour, fans were stunned. To understand the significance of her departure, you have to go back to how deeply Fiona was woven into the DNA of the show. Mrs. Brown's Boys was never a traditional sitcom. It was a family affair. Fiona grew up with the show quite literally. She was there before the television lights, before the global tours, before the fame. She played Maria when the lines were flubbed on stage and the jokes landed with a wink and a nudge. Over the years, Fiona's character evolved from a quiet newcomer to the Brown family circus into a central pillar. The calm in the chaos, the voice of reason in a world of outrageous antics. Interviewed candidly, Fiona very much opened up and surprisingly disarmingly answered the question regarding her leaving. After being a part of depicting Maria for over a decade, she found herself standing at a personal juncture. "I felt like I was living someone else's story," she said. "I needed to write my own. Not just leaving about a character, instead much closer to saying yes to herself. After all, the lady was a mother, in her 40s, and pretty much found life outside of Brown's household iron cage. There was no hasty or knee-jerk reaction. It was introspective, talking about a time with her kids, an area to grow in, and deciding she needed distance from something that didn't feel like it belonged to her anymore or had that instant sense about it. Naturally, speculation flowed. Fans wondered if there were other happenings. Was there drama going on behind the scenes? Was there family tension brewing underneath? After all, it can't be easy drawing the curtain on a show where your father is the boss. But Fiona wasted no time in quelling any speculation. In interview after interview, she emphasized that there was no fallout, no fight, and no ill feelings. She and her father, Brendan, remained as close as ever. Brendan has also been proud of the decision and has voiced his support. "She's my daughter first, not just Maria," he told the press. "And I admire her for knowing what she needs." It indeed did not make her absence any less noticeable. Maria Brown may not have been the most flashy character on the show. No littered salting, wigs, thrown hoots, and falls. She was essential. For Dermot, the anchor of emotions. For Agnes, the balance beam with madness, and in many ways the audience's stand-in. Maria was an actual person who reacted like a normal human being out of the middle of cartoonish chaos. Without it, Mrs. Brown's Boys felt just a little bit more unhinged, and a little less grounded. Although other characters stepped up, fans could tell the difference. Fiona's decision also created a rupture in the established dynamics of the show. For years, the strength of Mrs. Brown's Boys has lain in its close-knit cast, a complex mix of family and very old friends. However, as time wore on, the once obdurate core began to evolve. Fiona's departure became one of the first signs that change would come even to a family show built on tradition and loyalty. Her choice initiated dialogues about self-care, burnout, and the necessity of stepping away even from something beloved when it does not serve your spirit anymore. Since her departure from the show, Fiona has almost entirely withdrawn from the spotlight. She has chosen to spend time with family, and while she's not refusing the idea of returning to acting, her priorities lie elsewhere. Though she gives the odd interview or takes to the stage for discussions, she has never suggested that she regrets having left. On the contrary, she seems more grounded than ever and has proven that walking away is sometimes not the end of the story, but the start of a brand new chapter. Mrs. Brown's Boys fans may not see her as Maria Brown anymore. Nevertheless, there's no doubting Fiona O'Carroll's legacy within the show. Rory Cowan, now this one hurt. When Rory Cowan, who played the ever-glamorous and flamboyant Rory Brown, announced his departure from Mrs. Brown's Boys in 2017, fans were stunned. He wasn't just another cast member, he was the spirit of the show. With his vibrant energy, over-the-top fashion, and razor-sharp wit, Rory brought a kind of joy to the series that few characters could match. His character's constant banter with Agnes, his outrageous facial expressions, and the chemistry he shared with Brendan O'Carroll made him an instant fan favorite. For many, Rory was Mrs. Brown's son, and seeing him go felt like losing a piece of the heart of the show. Rory had been with the Brown family long before the television cameras ever rolled. In fact, he started out working behind the scenes as Brendan O'Carroll's publicist, helping promote the early stage shows across Ireland and the UK. Eventually, when the role of Agnes's son Rory needed to be cast, Brendan offered him the part. It was meant to be temporary, just until someone else was found. But Rory was a natural. With his iconic bleached hair, infectious laugh, and unique presence, he brought the character to life in a way no one else could. It didn't take long for audiences to fall in love with him, and for Rory to become an irreplaceable part of the cast. So when he departed from the live stage tour in 2017, the only question people asked was, why? What would make someone so central, and apparently so happy, walk away from a show so loved and clearly successful? It turns out the reason was personal, emotional, and, most importantly, very human. In interviews afterward, Rory revealed that the decision had nothing to do with arguments, creative differences, or even Brendan. All of it had something to do with his mother. Rory had cared for his aging mum for over a decade during the demanding touring and filming schedule created by Mrs. Brown's Boys. The hours spent on the road and away from home all put pressure on him. He had decided to reassess his life after the death of his mother. He admitted to being emotionally detached from it for some time. According to him, "I was sad on the show. I didn't enjoy it. I needed to go." However, it was not that he did not love the people he was working with or that he did not appreciate his fans. He just was no longer in the same place. The elation that had kept him performing was replaced by something heavier: grief, burnout, and a yearning for something much more personal. For someone renowned for his loud outfits and louder laugh, Rory's decision became a very quiet exercise in self-care. Fans were all for that decision, but nevertheless it was difficult for them. Rory was not only written off the show, but the role was recast. The character Rory Brown was, in fact, reassigned to Damien McKiernan, a former Mr. Ireland, who attempted to input some of his own take on the lovable character. But, however, the change was not easy to take. Damien had given it his all, but it was just not the same. The chemistry, the comic timing, the voice, it was all missing. For a vast audience of historical viewers, the adjustment was incredibly hard. The new Rory looked nothing like their Rory, and the interaction with Agnes was altered dramatically. Something very important went missing. In the meantime, Rory Cowan did not go away. He sidestepped towards different projects. In 2019, he joined the cast of the long-running Irish soap Fair City, where he played the part of John Bosco Walsh. That was a change in pace and in type of role, which allowed Rory to showcase some dramatic chops beyond comedy. Rory Cowan was also releasing a memoir at the time, Mrs. Cowan's Boy, where he discussed his life, his sexuality, his family, and yes, his time on Mrs. Brown's Boys. In it, Rory gave the picture of a man who had lived many lives, as a performer, caretaker, and son, trying hard to be himself against it all. While Rory's exit was low-key when compared to the high-profile entrances he made in performing, still, the legacy of his character on the show lives on. He may not have been the loudest in every scene, but he was often the heart of the character that added color, mischief, and warmth to the Brown household. For audiences, he was a crutch of joy. For the very show, he was a foundation stone. And for Brendan O'Carroll, he was more than a co-star, he was a trusted friend. Rory Cowan may have put away the wig and heels, but his portrayal of Rory Brown will forever remain one of the show's brightest highlights. Keep your jaw from dropping, because the next actor's departure from Mrs. Brown's Boys is on another level. Gary Hollywood. Of all the exits from Mrs. Brown's Boys, Gary Hollywood's departure may be the most controversial. Gary had played Dino Doyle, the flamboyant, fashion-forward hairdresser and Rory's on-screen partner, since the earliest days of the TV specials. With his perfectly styled hair, sharp tongue, and undeniable charm, Dino quickly became a scene stealer. His comedic chemistry with Rory, originally played by Rory Cowan, made them a fan-favorite couple in a show full of chaos. Dino's over-the-top personality and loyal friendship brought color and balance to the cast, and fans loved him for it. But in 2020, everything changed. Gary left the show, and this time, it wasn't due to personal growth or a quiet transition. It was sudden, it was loud, and it made headlines. For a show that prided itself on being one big happy family, both on and off screen, the circumstances around Gary's exit were deeply unsettling. There wasn't a warm farewell episode. There wasn't even an on-screen explanation. Dino simply vanished from the Christmas and New Year specials, and fans immediately began asking questions. According to Gary, the issue was simple: a pay dispute. He alleged that he and Damian McKiernan, who had taken over the role of Rory Brown, were being paid significantly less than the rest of the cast for the 2020 holiday specials. When Gary brought his concerns to the production team, he claims he was dismissed from future episodes. He described feeling blindsided by the decision, especially after being part of the show for over a decade. What hurt most, he later said, wasn't just the loss of the job. It was the sense of betrayal from a production that he believed treated its cast like family. After the events unfolded in quick succession, Gary raised a lawsuit against the alleged Fiona O'Carroll and other producers of the show in respect of his claims over unfair dismissal, discrimination, and unequal pay. It became a cause célèbre all over Ireland and the UK all of a sudden. Mrs. Brown's Boys was no longer simply another sitcom but completely immersed in a public legal drama. The fans stood divided. Some had come out in support of Gary, arguing that after years of being a loyal employee, he was wrongfully dismissed. Others defended Brendan by saying it could have just been a misunderstanding or a business decision. But no matter which side anyone stood on, the damage had already been done. The show had cracked its family image. Brendan denied the accusations, claiming that it had no grounds for discrimination and that the entire thing was an unfortunate misunderstanding. In interviews, he talked about the surprise of how the issue has played out, saying that he tried to resolve things behind the camera. But, with the legal action looming along with the torrid press coverage, it became obvious that there would be no reconciliation. Dino was gone, and he wasn't coming back. There was no substitute in his absence, no new hairstylist, no comic relief stand-in. The character, once one of the principal figures in many scenes, just went away, without a trace. For the long-term followers, the loss of Dino was more than just a change in casting. He has brought something very specific to the entire Mrs. Brownhead's world. Very vocal and lovable, flamboyant yet grounded. His presence in friendship with Rory and the flourish of comedy with Agnes was enough to spark the show to that extra degree. Some storylines just don't feel finished without it. Certain character dynamics shift subtly. And it also serves to remind that even shows based on real life and laughter are not immune to behind-the-scenes rip-offs at times. Such a close-knit ensemble was suddenly under a spotlight, and not the kind of scrutiny that the cast was used to. Gary mostly maintains silence over the details of the case since he left. He has, however, expressed disappointment in how things unfolded. He has continued to act in stage shows, make public appearances, but never again appeared in Mrs. Brown's Boys. For many fans, however, he will remain Dino, the campy, confident hairdresser lighting up the screen every time he walked in. His exit left a gap that has never really been filled. While the show goes on, there is no denying that something, or rather, someone is missing. Jennifer Gibney, who plays Kathy Brown, Agnes's intelligent, modern, and often underappreciated daughter, has been a part of Mrs. Brown's Boys since its inception. But her role is unique not just because of her character, but because of her real-life connection to the show's creator. Jennifer is married to